Hey guys, what's up? Ryan here with Top-Notch Persona, and thank you for tuning in to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 picks or fragrances you should wear for Valentine's Day. Now, Valentine's Day is a week from today, and that means a lot of things, right? It means that you're probably going to have to spend some money on, whomever. If you're dating someone or you're married or whatever, you're going to need to spend a little money. Second, it means that Hallmark is going to make a huge profit. I'm sure they do every year around Valentine's Day. Uh, and third off, you really need to find a special outfit with a special fragrance. And fortunately for you, your man is going to help you out with the fragrance part. I've trifurcated this list into 3 different parts. I figured that would be better than just blowing through my top 10 picks, as is so often done with these kind of videos. But I broke this up into 3 different parts. So depending on the amount of commitment in your relationship. So in the first part, I'm going to be talking about sexy first date fragrances. So say you just ask someone out for Valentine's Day, maybe you want to wear one of these. The second part, I have sensual fragrances for people in long-term relationships or who have been dating their partner for a while. In the third part, I have romantic fragrances for those of us who are married. Now, I should say before I dive into this that all of these fragrances can be used, regardless of how long you've been in a relationship. So if you're married and you want to wear something sexy, of course, go ahead. Or if it's a first date and you want to wear something romantic, go ahead. I'm just telling you how I decided to set up this list. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Thinking back to when I was dating, I would always want to wear something really profound on the first date, something really eye-catching, really noticeable, and with a fragrance that is no different. So these fragrances are all going to be relatively loud, they're going to be noticeable, they're going to be thought-provoking, and maybe even conversation invoking too. I mean, because some of these are a little more interesting. So first off, you guys can probably guess this one. Actually, you can probably guess the first 2. But I have Versace Eros. And this, I'm telling you, this is probably the most talked about fragrance in the fragrance community right now. Because it is so good. It is just a citrusy, minty, just vibrant, youthful, sexy, playboy-esque fragrance. And it is one that would be ideal for a first date. Next up, I have, of course, Sauvage Eau de Parfum. Now, this stuff is very sensual, very mysterious, very more aligned with a kind of a tough guy persona or like a badass persona than Versace Eros, which tends to be a more kind of just playful, youthful fragrance. This stuff is it's fun in its own way, but it's definitely a thought-provoking fragrance, and it's one that your date is probably going to ask you about. Next up is actually an interesting one because it is a Middle Eastern fragrance. It is Swiss Arabian Imperial Arabia. Now this stuff I recently got this, but I really like it. It's such a bright, floral, musky fragrance. And of course, like many other Middle Eastern fragrances, it does have oud in it, but the oud in this is beautifully blended with the other notes in here. And it just makes for, a very, like a subtle, mysterious fragrance. So it's something that I really do think that your date is going to ask you about because, it's also unisex like many, Middle Eastern fragrances. So it's not like, you know, that hyper masculine vibe that a lot of guys are going for. It's more unisex. It's more kind of playful even, and you know, definitely one that's going to invoke some curiosity in your date. The last one I have for this section is borderline this section and the next, because I think it could be worn interchangeably. It is Swiss Arabian Shaggoff Oud. Now this stuff has praline in it, this stuff has vanilla, this stuff has rose. It is probably, or actually definitely, the most gourmand fragrance I have in my collection. And because it is so sweet, it is so delicious, it's just the perfect one to wear on a first date, because it's going to get you attention from whomever you're dating. But it's also one that you could wear if you've already been dating the person for a while, just because it is such a beautiful fragrance, and you know, it's not too romantic, but it's romantic enough. Next up, we have fragrances for long-term relationships. Now these are all very subtle, they're mellow, they're easy to wear, and they're just very sensual fragrances. All right, first off, I have Burberry Brit. Now this stuff was my very first designer fragrance, so it has a special place for me, and it is one that every time I wear it, I'm just like reminded of, you know, coming into the game and, you know, getting into fragrances. But this stuff is also the ideal date fragrance. Wild rose is one of the most prominent notes in this. There are other spices, kind of a woody aspect, but it is predominantly rose, which makes it a very romantic, very sensual kind of fragrance. You know, it does sit fairly close to the skin, but that's all right, because, you know, in a long-term relationship, you're probably going to be doing some cuddling after dinner or whatever. So I think this one would be a great choice. Next up, I have another one of my first full bottle actually, Dolce and Gabbana, the one. Now this stuff is like super sensual, like sensual overload. It is such a smooth, refined, masculine fragrance. You know, it's heavy on the tobacco in this one, and it just is so perfect for, you know, dates or any kind of situation where you need to, you know, pull off that sensual look. But especially for Valentine's Day, this one would do you really well. Third, I have another Dolce& and Gabbana the one, but this one is the Eau de Parfum Intense. Now, I was actually really surprised how much I like this one. This is actually my scent of the day. I'm wearing this right now. It is such a breathtaking fragrance. There's no tobacco in this one. There's not a lot of what made the original so sensual and so masculine. Uh, but there is, you know, there's a certain something to this one. I can't really put my finger on it, but it's just such a an enveloping, just an overall beautiful fragrance. Something that, you know, your date is going to absolutely love. These last three fragrances all have something very similar to each other. And in my book, they are all 10 out of 10 masterpieces. Alright, first off, I have a Givenchy, a Gentleman EDP Boisse. Now this stuff is recent. This one came out last year, I believe. It has iris in it, and it has a chocolate note, it has other spices, it has a woody quality. It actually reminds me of a much more refined Sauvage. So think of like the toughness, the ruggedness of Sauvage, and think of Dior Homme. It's kind of like a combination of those two, because I feel this one is just it doesn't quite project, it doesn't quite have the power of Sauvage, but that's absolutely all right for Valentine's Day, for dating, because you don't necessarily even want that power, especially if you're married or in a long-term relationship. You want something subtle that's going to sit close to the skin, that your partner is going to be able to get when you're cuddling, or doing whatever else after, your dinner, or the movie you go to, or whatever. So great pick. Givenchy, gentlemen, EDP Poisse. Next up, I literally just said it. I couldn't make my mind up between these two, so I'm just going to show them both. I have the original Dior Homme. Make sure it's the original though, not the new one. The new one is like more mass appealing. It's more of an everyday fragrance. It is not a romantic fragrance like this one. This one, everybody knows it. Everybody who's anybody knows this one. It has the iris. It has the vanilla. It has that like makeup-y kind of vibe to it. Which gives it a rather effeminate quality, which I really love about this one. And for Valentine's Day, for a date, this stuff is like, can't do much better than the original Dior Homme for Valentine's Day. The only way you can do maybe a little better is if you go with a Dior Homme Intense. Now this stuff is a little darker, it's a little more bold, I would say. It's not as light and airy as Dior Homme is, which is indicative by, the intent in the title. But it is still a very beautiful, very nice, gorgeous kind of enveloping fragrance. You got the iris in here. You got the woods, you got the spices. It's a very mellow, easy one to wear, but you have to be bold to pull this one off. This one is an elegant fragrance, so it's definitely not for people who want to be more safe with their fragrance. But I think for that reason, it's a great pick for Valentine's Day. It's a great pick for dating in general. Well, there you have it, guys. My top 10 picks for what to wear on Valentine's Day. Obviously, a fragrance is a fragrance, and fragrances mean different things to different people. So I think, you could pretty much wear anything on Valentine's Day and get away with it, with the exception perhaps of something that's very heavy on oud. But these are just my 10 picks that, if I were wearing something, which I will be, I'll probably be wearing Dior Homme Intense, or maybe Sauvage Eau de Parfum, because I'll be working that day. But typically, you'd be good with whatever. Let me know down in the comments what you're going to be wearing. Are you going to be wearing anything from my list? Do you have anything else in mind? What kind of vibe are you going for on Valentine's Day? Also, who are you dating? Are you asking someone out for the first time? Are you in a long-term relationship? Or are you married? And do you think your level of commitment affects your decision to wear a fragrance? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you haven't given this one a thumbs up yet, definitely do so now. And make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you stay up to date with everything else I do, because trust me, you want to. Alright guys, before you leave, remember, when you look and smell your best on Valentine's Day, you feel your best. And that's what matters.